Hello guys and welcome back to my channel. And in today's lecture we are going to talk about a very important concept of CloudFormation, which is called as parameters. In the last video we have discussed about resources, how you can create an AWS resource with the help of CloudFormation. So in today's video we will continue the same discussion, but we will be more emphasized towards parameter. So first thing comes first, like what is a parameter, how we can define a parameter, and is this a compulsory part of CloudFormation or not, and how we can reference to these parameter inside the resources. So my today's lecture will revolve around all these questions, and at the end of the you can say concept, we are going to deploy some of the resources with the help of parameters. So let's start from the definition. So definition is, with a parameter you can input custom values to your template each time you create or update a stack. So this is purely an Amazon definition that parameters are used to get a customized value of a resource, right? You can define and you can update a resource value with the help of a parameter. So as they are mentioning, use the optional parameter. I am just giving this lecture from directly from Amazon documentation. So this is a source of truth. Use the optional parameter. Last time we have created a resource where we have not defined any parameter inside that template. All right, which means that you can deploy a resource without a parameter. It is not a compulsory component, but it is a desirable to use parameters because of some important reasons. For example, in the last video, when I have just used a resource to deploy, when I have used test resources to deploy my resource in the AWS, so I have not used any parameter over there. What that mean? That means I have hard coded the value of that particular resource which I've created inside this template, which means that all of my configurations has been exposed. Everything is exposed. In the last video where I have only defined the resource is my EC2 instance, although it's just an instance, I have not, you can say, exposed my important information. But what if you are, you can say, collecting some important information in a DynamoDB? Okay, if you define your schema, then someone can interfere inside that particular DB and can delete your data, can corrupt your data, which is sometimes very important. Okay, so that's why it is always a recommended practice to use parameters so that you can, number one, which helps you to know to use a hardcode value inside a template. This is number one thing. Then you only don't have one resource inside your CloudFormation. CloudFormation is actually solving your problem to, like, if you have deleted your resources, you can try to recreate. You can manage your resources. You can update your resources without any issues. Okay. Plus, you can also take the complete change code of your resources. Okay. So that is another thing. But for example, let's say you have 100 of resources, or you can say you are using 100 of EC2 instances. I'm just talking an example where for every instance you have to define, okay, so for this instance I have T2 micro, this, whatever. So if you are going to increase or upsize your EC2, then what you need to do? You have to update that particular hard-coded value inside all the value where you have defined inside the resource. It is not easy. It looks very good, but it's not easy because this can be done with the help of just one step, which is a parameter. By the use of parameter, you can easily do this task. How? We will see in this lecture. Okay, so now I have defined parameters, but one other thing which I want to elaborate, a very important concept, that sometimes the parameter you are going to define for a resource might not be available in the particular region. In that case, you have to be very carefully design all these parameters. You use mappings over there. You define, okay, so if you're using this region, then these are the values. If you're using that region, then these are the values. So you have to take a good care about when you're designing the solution over the CloudFormation. We will talk about mappings in the later or upcoming videos because right now we are focusing on the parameters. So now let's move forward and see about the syntax of this particular parameter section. Basically, there are two ways or two supported languages by CloudFormation. And as I mentioned in my previous lectures, we will be only using YAML language as this is easy to understand and easy to add the values. And this is mostly, you can say, a human readable language. It's pretty much whatever you see, it's going to deploy. In JSON, you have to take care about quotation marks, brackets, and a lot of commas, whatever. If you just miss one thing, it's become an issue. But in case of YAML, you can see one thing is mentioned in JSON and the other one is YAML. So you can clearly see the difference. It's quite straightforward. You just need to define parameters and what is our logical ID, description, type. These are basically all these components of the parameter. So now, as we are focusing on the YAML language syntax, so let's see the component of a parameter in the YAML language. So this is parameter. Okay. So parameters, it has a logical ID, which is the name of the parameter. Description, this is again which you can describe any information like what this parameter is for. Then you need to mention type. Then you need to mention default. Then you need to mention the allowed values. Now we will go one by one with all these parameters, and I will also tell you, do we need all these parameters, all these components inside a parameter, or we can just define one or two and it should be fine. The main thing is inside this parameter, which is important, your parameter logical ID, that is important. Other thing is your type. This is really important. If you just define these two things inside a parameter, that should be enough. Okay, because the value, I will be just telling you one thing, in which I have told you in my previous lecture, that I will have or I will be using the SAM to deploy all these particular resources in the CloudFormation. So SAM is a serverless application module which I will be using to deploy everything in the AWS. And I am using that particular SAM because I have created a deploy.sh file in the last video, and I am going to define the value of parameter from that deploy script, and then I reference that parameter inside this CloudFormation update. This looks a little bit complex to understand, but once we do some projects, it will be very easy for you. I will be also giving you, you can say, my GitHub repository in the description notes. Please go and have a look. I have already pushed the latest codes inside that particular repository. So let's go through all these components one by one. So we will see from allowed values. So what is allowed value? You can define this as a list. For example, you are working in dev environment. Okay, you want that this course is only for dev, UAT, and prod environment. Okay, or you can also mention that this particular course is for dev and then prod environment. Whatever you can think. You can mention I can use environment as a parameter. Okay, why it is important? Because sometimes you are going to use the name of the environment as a parameter and define resources name with the help of this parameter value. For example, you can say this is an EC2 function. So if it is just calculating a bill for dev, then you can name the lambda function as calculating lambda dev function. And in the UAT, the same name will be replaced by a parameter for UAT. So this is a doable task. So that's why we give allowed values information so that you can choose that value with the help of the environment or with the help of parameters. Okay, and you're going to define all these things in the you can say in the deploy script. Okay, and is this value is required? No. If you don't give allowed values information, they still work. The other thing is I'm just focusing on the information that is provided here in the component section over here. I'm just choosing this information. I will go description, type, default, and allowed values. So we have discussed allowed values. Now let's see what exactly discussing next. All right, default. So default is if you are not going to define any value inside the deployed script, then by default, whatever defined, it picks over there. For example, we are going to deploy an EC2 machine instance today with help of CloudFormation and parameters. So let's say in the parameter, I have not defined the instance type. which is t.micro. If I have not defined the value of the parameter inside my deploy script, but I have mentioned in the parameter that if nothing defined, this is a default value which I can mention over there. Alright. This value can be defined as one value, and if you have more than one value, you can define it as a list again. So it all depends how you need. But again, this is not a required thing. You can ignore, it's not important to define default value inside the parameters component. Then description. Description means describe the parameter, what exactly it is doing. It is a requirement? No. So you can ignore this value as well. Max length, I'm not going to discuss. Max value, I'm not going to discuss. I am going to discuss about type. So it is very important to define this type. The type has different values, like it can be string, it can be integer, it can be any, you can say, if I go here, you can define number, you can define list, comma, delimited list, whatever. So they have mentioned some of the acceptable types here. I will be using string type here. And if you see, this is a yes requirement. So far, we have seen we just need this type and we need a physical ID. Okay. So these are the two factors. If you just define these two things inside a parameter, that should be enough. Okay. Now, they are going to give you an example. This is a parameter. This is a logical ID. This is a description. And you can see that in the description, they have just given, okay, you can choose type is string. They have given a default value, which is t.micro. And plus, they have given allowed values t2.micro, m1.small, m1.large. And you can see that default value is t2.micro, which is present inside the allowed values. If, for example, you are going to use t3.micro, will that deploy that resource? The answer is no, because that particular value does not lie inside this allowed value. Okay, this is very important check, and you will be getting an error that this is not the allowed value. All right, so let's begin with our deployment. Last time I have created, we need three files. One is deploy.sh, which is a deployment script. One is packaging script, package.sh, and then we need a main template of our Cloudformation. So I have made some changes in the deploy script from the last. This is a deploy script. So I have defined instance underscore type, which is t3.micro. Okay. I have just defined this is a variable, which is underscore instance underscore type. Okay. And then inside the SAM configuration file, I have given this parameter override the same instance type equals to instance type. So this is what I'm defining as a parameter. So this is the parameter and this is the value. Value is I have already defined this as a t3.micro here. Okay, you can define as many variables as you want over here, but just important thing is whatever name you are going to use here, like capital, this is case sensitive, this is important. You have to define the same thing in the main Cloudformation template. So I have used instance type. Okay, I don't need to give the value, but if you go to this EC2 template, I have defined this parameter. I have defined instance type. Okay, this is my parameter which I have defined in the deploy script. Then I have defined type equal to script. If I just remove this default value and allowed value and this one, this still gonna work. Okay, so here we have defined the parameter inside this template. But now, how we can use this parameter which we have just defined over here inside the resource? Last time when I have created this resource, I was using like this, insert type t3.micro. Okay, I have defined this value here. If the value is hard-coded defined here, then it should not go into parameter because we have not reference to this parameter yet, right? So whenever a source is created, it say, okay, so I need to create my instance. This is the type, this is the property, this is image ID, which is again you can see how hard coded. We can also define a you can say image ID as a parameter and then reference to that value over here. But let's focus on this instance type. I have defined this instance type as a parameter. So what I need to do is how we can use or how we can reference to that parameter simply by using this refer, and I'm using it. If you see, it is already giving me the value instance type. That's it. All right. Let me save this file. I'm just saving this one. Okay. Now my deployed script is ready. Okay. I have already added this variable save, and I have also added this particular thing in this particular template. All right. Okay. So I am already inside my directory. Let me see git status as my this is a git directory. So you can see I have made some changes in the deploy.sh and ec.yaml. Okay. Now I will push these files later, but let me deploy these files now. Okay. So the process is very easy. Dot slash package dot sh. Okay. I am doing packaging. All right. Packaging failed. Please check the errors in the type. Okay. So it is giving me this information is not correct. As I'm doing a live, so please remember mistakes will be expected. But I can see this error very clearly. So I just go to my template and I can see because when I was using this thing so what exactly happened here when I have added this. Okay, RE. So it has given me an option, and when I press tab, again you can see it has picked the complete value, and that's why I got double exclamation mark. It should be a single exclamation mark. Okay, so let me save this file. Let me do a packaging again. Dot slash package dot sh. So now you can see I have this is packaged successfully. Dot slash deploy dot sh. Now it is giving me information. This is a stack name is this, and here it is giving a parameter. So parameter override is instance type is t0 micro, which means it has taken the instance type parameter. Okay. So uploading a tag with claim this, it is adding a new instance. My instance, this is the value. I am going to do yes. Okay, simple. Now if I go to the Cloudformation, so now you can see that it has created a stack. If I go inside the stack, I can see inside resources, this is my instance created, and parameters I've used. I can see instance type is T0 micro. So if I go to resources and I open this one, it will be taking me into the EC2 management console. Okay. So if you see this value parameter, this is t3.micro. Okay. So which means that the instance which I have created should be t3.micro. Is that correct? I can see that one instance created t3.micro. Okay. dd3. If I go here, it is again resources dd3. This is the physical ID of the instance. All right. So now next, let's update the value from t3.micro to t2.micro. I will go back to Real Studio and go here. So this time I will be using, so instead of any changes inside that resource, I just modify this value, save this information. All right. Now I need to package, although we don't need to package, but as I have changed the value, it is always a good practice for me to do these things from scratch, like I do package and deploy again. So now I can see that this value has been updated. Okay, and it has also detected the change set. Change set means it has detected a change. So you can see that it is a modify my instance, and replacement is conditional. Okay, I will give you a brief idea about this conditional, but later we will give more details about this conditional. So conditional comes or means that as we are resizing this EC2 instance, so might be possible this particular resource will be deleted first and recreated again. Okay, so that's why replacement means conditional. So AWS is using conditional for those resources whose value is not straightforward. Like I have changed a particular, you can say, size of that instance. So basically, CloudFormation will take care about this information. It is first delete this particular instance and then recreate with the new values. So yes, I will be modifying this resource. Let me do that. So now I am deploying this resource. It is in progress, update in progress. Yep, it will take some time because it is now deleting the resource first, which takes some time, and then recreating the resource. So again, it takes some time. And I can show you the events in the, so if I go back here in the events, so you can see update in progress. And if you see here, create, complete, now update in progress. It is giving the update in progress. It's still taking some time. Update complete. Okay. If I refresh this one, you will be getting a message, update complete. Now let's go to this instance. So right now, it's showing GQ micro. So you can see how easily it is easy to manage the resources with your parameter. So this is the one parameter, and you can easily go and create about, or you can easily update the resources values. So this is the first, you can say, small project which I have just completed. But in the later videos, we will talking about some different projects. Thank you so much. And if you need any other information about CloudFormation, please let me know. And if you are keen to understand about DevOps, this is a very important series as a first step, because after this thing, I will be giving a complete roadmap about DevOps and preparing some one-shot videos that are related to Lambda functions, that are related to YAML language, and GitHub as well, GitHub Action, and code pipelines. Everything will be covered in this particular. So thank you so much. Keep watching and keep learning. Have fun.